Bolivia is sliding into anarchy.
Welcome to La Paz, a city whose very name means the peace, but as you can see on the streets today it's not particularly peaceful.
Once most of Bolivia's farmers grew coca, not anymore. Coca can be turned into cocaine, and so the United States has pressurized Bolivia into destroying almost the entire crop. This is the story of who's really paying the price for America's war against drugs. For weeks, this has been everyday life in La Paz. Farmers jamming the city streets, police on alert, everyone on edge. Women don't usually join demonstrations here, but this is a fight for everyone. I set off to find the nerve centre of the daily protests, the Confederation of Bolivian Farmers. There were rumours the farmers, the campesinos, planned to block every road into the city.
We're going to have to painstakingly make our way up here, and I say painstakingly because here in La Paz, where we're 4 kilometres above sea level, every step makes you feel like an old woman or an old man.
That's one reason they grew coca in the first place. Chewing it helps altitude sickness. These farmers know exactly why the Americans want to eradicate coca, but they say the way it's being done is ruining their country.
Mucho peor después la eradicación de coca.
Peor porque no hay circulante, no hay dinero.
Since they've started the coca eradication schemes, life has got much, much worse because there's absolutely no money circulating.
They were chewing coca leaves. For them, it's like a cup of tea. If other people want to turn it into cocaine, I was told, that's their business.
It's very important that we know that for the campesinos, the coca leaf, it's not something they get high on. It's not like snorting it up your nose. It's used as a medical infusion, and also it's used for sustenance. It's used to mask pain, and it's used as almost a vitamin source.
Y otra cosa, ¿por qué están haciendo en Estados Unidos la planta de coca se están llevando para Colombia?
The problem with drugs is not with really Bolivia. It's in San Francisco, it's in Los Angeles, it's in the United States. It's not a Bolivian problem.
Or rather, it is. The farmers know global demand transformed the Bolivian economy, and they don't want it reversed. Freddy Mamani, deputy leader of the union, arrived with important news. Farmers had blocked a key road into the city, and the government was warning if they weren't gone by 3 o'clock, the army would attack. He said he'd take us there.
What would happen today if there's a violent confrontation between the army and the people? We're going to lose because we don't have anything.
We were the only civilian vehicle on what's normally one of Bolivia's busiest roads. Farmers have been blocking the roads with boulders for months. The first barricade came into view.
I'm not sure if we'll be able to get around the side, but I'd say we'll manage.
The farmers are out to paralyse the economy until the government reverses the eradication plan. The soldiers who clear the roads are conscripts. It's hard to know where their sympathies really lie.
He said
he's removing the rocks that his parents and his family members and friends put on the road during the night. Pero no quiere disparar a sus padres, a su familia. He's saying, well, if this blockade continues, he's afraid the time will come when they're supposed to shoot. He doesn't want to, but he would have to. We pressed on in search of the farmers' leader. Suddenly we were at an army roadblock. All farmers travelling in the same direction as us were being stopped. We've been brought to a halt. We seem to have a whole line of soldiers blocking the road up ahead.
Hasta Chuba, con Jancomar vamos a llegar allá. Por aquí. Pero vayan a organizar.
Yo quisiera que lo enfoquen los militares.
The villagers here want us, the international press, to go and speak to the soldiers and ask them to clear the road. So, let's go and see what they say to that. Behind me, a defiant farmer let off a stick of dynamite.
Hola.
Ya hablamos ayer.
Sí, hola.
No podemos pasar. Can we not pass?
No pueden pasar.
Oh, pueden.
Claro.
He's saying, yes, you can pass. Vamos, gracias. I don't know if it's valid to say that because we spoke to them now, they've decided to clear off the road. Because they don't like bad publicity. I'm not sure if that's the case. But for whatever reason, they have cleared the road. They still look pretty menacing, though, with those guns. We drove on. Ahead, more boulders. It's a bumpy ride, very, very bumpy. We have to be careful here. We entered what's effectively a no-go area for the army. Some farmers were preparing to stone our vehicle, but backed off when they saw Freddie.
Just meters away from the burnt-out car, we've got what used to be the police headquarters. Ransacked, abandoned. There are no police in Achicachi anymore.
Achicachi is home to the farmers' leader, Felipe Quispe. It turned out he'd moved on, fearing assassination. But thousands of armed farmers had gathered nonetheless, defying the army's ultimatum. They're armed, they're showing us guns, they're old, ancient weapons, but they're prepared to use them, they say. They say to the army, come and get us, we're waiting for you. The farmers see this as much more than an economic issue. They see it as an example of age-old ethnic discrimination. Kill off coca to help the white man. To hell with the Indians.
She doesn't want to be in this Bolivia. She wants change right now. She's calling out for change immediately.
The government deadline passed, and the army didn't attack. For the farmers, a victory of sorts in what is becoming close to civil war. With the roads to La Paz blocked, we headed for Los Yungas, a coca-growing region deep in the Andes. It was next on the army hit list for eradication.
This is the road we're taking to Yungas. The cocaleros use it to transport their produce to La Paz. They call it El Camino de la Muerte, or the Road of Death. It's officially the most dangerous road in the world.
Earlier this year, farmers had blocked the road and stopped troops advancing into the coca area. The soldiers disobeyed orders to open fire. No one expected that to happen a second time. We were stopped at a checkpoint, set up to prevent the movement of chemicals used to make cocaine from coca.
Y cada día se intercepta cosas.
Sí, todos los días se incauta sustancias químicas líquidas.
See, and he say every day he encounters chemicals trying to go through this road.
Se está reduciendo con la reducción de la coca, de la hoja de coca, se está reduciendo.
He's saying that there has been a great reduction in the traffic of coca since the eradication plan, pero existe todavía, sí, narcotrafficking.
Sigue existiendo, va
but
a
it still exists.
Va a seguir.
Soon we were surrounded by coca. It's the only thing the global economy wants from Bolivia. The US is giving aid to help Bolivia rebuild its economy, but it's nowhere near the $600 million a year the drug trade used to bring in. Pedro Ramirez, a coca farmer, had invited us to come and see how he lived. He and his wife and 2 children spend 8 hours a day in their coca field. It hasn't made them rich.
Esta es mi casa.
Su casa, su dormitorio, ¿sí?
Mi dormitorio.
This is my house, he says. This is my room where I sleep. ¿Y es su cama?
Sí.
Is that your bed?
Yo duermo con mi hijo.
I sleep there with my son.
Sí. Mi esposa y mi hija.
and my wife sleeps there with my daughter.
He took me to see his plantation. Even in the heyday of coca production, these farmers didn't earn much. Most of the profit was further up the drug chain. But the substitute crops make even less.
Esta planta no puedo cambiar por otro.
This plant cannot be changed for another. ¿Por qué no?
Solamente por la tierra.
Because of the ground, he says.
Pero los americanos, ellos son los que ellos han enseñado a pisar la cocaína.
It's Americans who taught us how to make cocaine.
Porque el campesino no conoce cocaína.
We campesinos, we don't know cocaine. We don't know anything of it.
Nosotros producimos la coca y nada más.
We produce coca and nothing else.
Desde el Collasuyo.
It's the symbol of the Inca nation, and this culture is ours. Back in La Paz, it was the biggest feast day of the year. The city had been brought to a standstill, this time by a military parade. While we'd been gone, 8 farmers had been shot by the army. In the last year, 40 farmers have died in this way. Hundreds have been injured. But in a way, the government has a gun to its own head. If you want more aid, says America, stop growing coca. They call it the Dignity Plan. The Interior Minister was at the parade. I decided to ask him if he'd authorized the shooting of unarmed civilians.
¿Era usted que ha dado los órdenes a disparar los campesinos ayer? I asked him if he gave orders to shoot.
No hemos ordenado ningún disparo hacia los campesinos. Nadie tolera que estén bloqueadas, ¿no es verdad? Aquí en Bolivia tampoco se tolera que estén bloqueadas. Es lo mismo, señorita.
Sí, gracias. He says that we didn't give orders to shoot with bullets that will kill, with proper bullets. He says, but we have to open the roads, we have to lift these blockades. To be like in your country, you couldn't have the situation of road blockades in your country, so why should we in Bolivia?
No voy a declarar más. Gracias.
But the farmers had a different version of events. They told us they were shot down with live ammunition. They shot us like animals, they said. The new Bolivian head of the Dignity Plan was being sworn in. It was an awkward occasion. His predecessor had been sacked for smuggling arms to Argentina. The ceremony was full of anti-narcotics officials, congratulating themselves on the success of the Dignity Plan. I managed to talk to Stanley Schrager, the link man between the US Embassy and the Bolivian military.
Bolivia has probably the best record in the world of reducing coke over the last 5 years. And it's due in large part, of course, to the work of the Bolivian government and the people you see here today, but also, I think, with the support of the United States.
Yes, but it's caused a lot of unrest in the country. People say that they're feeling real economic hardship as a result of the loss of drug revenues, and that it affects everyone from the cocaleros through all campesinos, even to the middle classes.
I think it has had an effect. Obviously, it has had a negative effect because the narcotics trade in this country was such a large part of the economy for so long. But I think we have shown that we have other alternatives, and our Agency for International Development has an extensive alternative development project where we work with campesinos and former cocaleros to grow other crops to make up for what they've lost. It's a difficult process.
You can say that again. A few miles from La Paz is a place which perfectly illustrates the problem of substitute crops.
We're at the Via Fatima market, the biggest coca market in the whole of Bolivia. Here coca is taken from Yungas and Chipare to be weighed, bagged and redistributed to other points in the country. This coca is for internal consumption. It's a huge market. As I was walking up the street here, I wasn't sure if I was on the right road, and suddenly I could smell the overpowering stench of coca. Stench, it's a nice smell actually, it's kind of like hay.
Coca is a plant perfectly suited to the Bolivian climate. It can be harvested 4 times a year, and even for local legal use, it fetches a good price. By contrast, substitute crops are more difficult to grow and fetch rock-bottom prices.
900. So now this bag of coca is 900 Bolivianas, which I think would be about $150, more or less.
Outside, I found a woman selling oranges and lemons. She told me the same weight of oranges fetched about 6 Bolivianos, or $1.
She's saying, yes, there's always money in coca. And oranges, nothing. But she says in coca there'll always be money. In these, she's nothing. No hay nada, no?
It was dawn, and we were now with the army, setting out on an eradication mission. Once Bolivia was the 3rd biggest producer of coca in the world. Now 90% has been wiped out. These are the soldiers, funded by US military aid, who work every day to tear coca out of the fields. They've already swept through this area once this year. One officer told me that eradication was moving ahead at 80 miles an hour, while the alternatives were crawling along at 20.
We've just come across our first coca plant.
One additional reason Bolivian farmers are so resentful is the Dignity Plan has done nothing to reduce cocaine use worldwide. Their business has simply moved to Colombia. As our squad dug up the fresh plants, we came upon the evidence that the illegal trade was still operating in Bolivia as well.
Observa si hay personas o policías que vienen.
See, this is a lookout point. It's where, until probably very recently, someone was watching the whole area to see if any police are coming.
It's been a really, really hard trek. It's a bit too Indiana Jones for my liking, but apparently what we're looking for is right down here. And this is it. We found our cocaine factory. The owners of this operation had slipped away just before we arrived, but this was primitive technology, eminently transportable. One or two people walk up and down this. It's like a treadmill in a gym, and this is to crush these leaves into a paste. In one sense, this capture can only be good news, but ordinary Bolivians don't see the world view. They see the immediate effect.
The people who own this laboratory, had we not rumbled them, they would have earned £1,200 for this day's work. But it's more than the factory that goes up in flames. This is money lost that would have been spent in local shops, local hospitals, local schools. We returned to La Paz. This is the government building, and this woman is shouting at the authority here, saying she's had enough, an end to drugs, an end to corruption. She says there's no justice in this country.
La Paz should be the place where government support is strongest, but it's crumbling here too.
This is the street in La Paz where casual workers come here in the hope of finding a day's work. Ever since the economic crisis set in after coca eradication, more and more people come here every day. They advertise their trades on these bags. For example, here, carpenter. This man is a plumber. Somebody here is a plasterer and a painter, and another plumber. But these men have already been waiting here for hours, so it's unlikely that today anybody's going to come along and offer them a job.
Many are dominated by a sense of shame. They've had to abandon their professions and take up anything that helps make ends meet.
Buenos días, señora. ¿Es su profesión estar aquí vendando pan en la calle, sí? No, it's not my profession, she's saying, to sell bread in the street. ¿Y cuál es su profesión? Profesora. She's a teacher. Profesora de secundaria. Sí, she's a secondary school teacher.
While talking to people in the market, I got a message that the farmers' leader, Felipe Quispe, had come out of hiding.
Hacemos las paces, entonces.
The government, it seemed, wanted to negotiate with him.
I think finally we're going to meet the man who's holding the Bolivian government to ransom. This is Quispe, the man who has declared the Republic of Achicalchi within the Republic of Bolivia. I think we finally got him. It's Quispe there, wearing the cap with coca leaves in front of him. This is the man who's threatening to lay siege to La Paz. We're waiting till this meeting's over and then we hope to interview him.
He was holding a meeting to decide what line to take. Back in the 80s, Quispe spent 6 years in prison for belonging to a Marxist guerrilla group that made explosives. He was fighting then to promote the rights of indigenous Bolivians over whites. Quispe is using the present dispute to extend that war.
He's got very uptight. You have once said that the whites should be thrown out of Bolivia. ¿Por qué?
Bueno, mira, este territorio es de nosotros.
This is our land.
Los blancos han usurpado, nos han despojado nuestro territorio.
This isn't their land.
Nos han despojado el poder político que teníamos nosotros. Entonces ellos han vendido nuestras riquezas naturales. No,
they've come and taken our natural resources and riches.
Y están queriendo destruir nuestra coca, están queriendo destruir nuestra cultura, nuestra religión. Todo lo que tenemos están rifando ellos.
And they're trying to destroy our coca, our religion, our culture. Es muy racista, ¿sí?
No, no es racista.
No, I said it's not racist.
No es una lucha racial.
No?
No, jamás.
It's not racist, he said, but it's hard to underestimate how dangerous the situation in Bolivia has become. The poorest country in South America is falling apart as it does its bit to address a social problem of the Western world.
I tried to ask him if he could win this conflict, how he could win this conflict without arms, but no, he says, I've no time, and he's run off to the taxi, that's it.
Every day the protests build. 30 years ago, Che Guevara was killed in Bolivia for trying to start a revolution. Now it looks as if the Americans are succeeding where Che Guevara failed.
They're shooting there, I think they're shooting tear gas.
The protesters' favourite chant is coca or death.
Oh, he's pointing that canister right our way.
It will come to that for some Bolivians in this unequal battle between the rich and the poor.